Right, I think we're now on. So we should start seeing some names appearing. Hey Brian, first name in there. Katerina, Lena. Here we go. People are coming in now. Nice to see. Hello, people's AI note takers. Excellent. This is working now. Okay, fantastic. We're going to let this run for another minute or two. Make sure we get people in. I'm just always scrolling now to see if there's any people, any names I recognise in there. We'll give it one more minute and we will get started. Okay, cool. So let's get going. Welcome everybody to our Lumar's webinar for February 2025. Matt, sorry if you could just get back to the first slide. I can't remember the title off the top of my head. Thank you very much. So today, our topic is optimizing SEO workflows for better dev collaboration. So effectively, how, as an SEO or as a dev, I guess, do you work with your counterparts in either the SEO or the dev team? It's a thing that a lot of SEOs I know struggle with, and it's a thing that, especially on the pro services team here. So I spend a lot of time working directly with clients. It's a thing that I deal with a lot, and I think it's a thing that Matt and our sales team comes across when speaking to a lot of SEO. So hopefully today we're going to give you some tips, tricks, and some information that's going to help you actually start making those differences. So if you hop to the next slide, please, Matt. So yeah, we're going to do some introductions and housekeeping. Then we're going to get into common pitfalls, breaking the cycle, actual real world success, and then we're going to do some questions and answers at the end.
By the way, just for context, my name is Matt Hill. I am a senior solution consultant here at Lumar. Keeping with the slide, Chris, on the introductions. But I'll be walking through most of the content today. And yeah, if people don't know who you are, Chris.
Yeah, and well, I'm Chris. I'm a senior technical SEO here at Lumar. So as I say, I am essentially we're like a mini agency within the business, and I spend a lot of time interacting directly with clients. I tend to work with a lot of our big and weird clients, so I've got a lot of experience on trying to explain strange ephemeral issues to both to SEOs and to developers. So yeah, a little bit of housekeeping if we hop to the next slide. Yep, that's us. Okay, next slide again. Sorry, Matt. So yeah, a couple of quick things. If you need or want to use closed captions, there is a closed captions icon in your Zoom toolbar. If it's not available, especially if you're on a phone or something like that, you might need to tap on the more icon, and then from there it's labeled show subtitles. You can also do a view live transcript. And then also, if you enjoy the webinar today and want to share it with somebody, the recording will be distributed in a couple of days' time. We'll have full subtitles included when we release that.
So much stuff being tracked. View live transcript. I will do my best not to curse on today's webinar.
Okay, and I think this is the final bit. Questions, please type into the Q&A box. Feedback, there'll be a feedback form at the end. It takes less than a minute to complete. And as I say, the on-demand will be shared in a few days by email. So moving on, I think this takes us, oh, we've got the closed caption slide in there again. There we go, to our poll question number one. So poll question number one, how successful is the collaboration between SEO and developers in your organization? This is always a very interesting thing. I'm going to give everybody 30 seconds or so to answer. And I'm very interested to see where this comes in. I think sometimes as well, because I found it varies massively by the business, and you have certain industries where it works quite well and others where it doesn't. But I'll be very, very interested to see what we get.
The process, right? Sometimes, as we'll talk about, that relationship can change over time. as certain
Yeah.
people leave and enter an organization. But yeah, very curious on the results here as well.
Well, sometimes as well, depending on what happens, it can happen very quickly as well. I.e., if sometimes somehow a dev change is made that absolutely tanks SEO and a business relies on it, it can very quickly become a matter of
Nice
importance.
relationship. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so we should be getting the results any second. Um, a pretty standard bell curve there, actually. It's good to
Yeah.
see. So, one person saying very unsuccessful, one person saying very successful, um, tending towards successful, but a lot in the middle, which I think is about right, Matt. I think for
Mhm.
a lot of people, it tends to be basically a coin flip as to whether or not what they want to get done actually gets done.
Which makes me think that if it's neither successful or unsuccessful, because it's that coin flip, it could depend heavily on the projects that are being worked on at a given time. And like you said, the success and the results of those projects. It's almost a little volatile. So
Yeah.
not what you want ideally in an organization. I'd also be very curious, maybe later on, if they want to post in the comments for the person who said very successful, what are the things that have led to that success? And do they align with some of the things that we talk about here in this presentation?
Yeah.
So definitely curious.
100%. Okay, fantastic. So moving on. Right, over to you, Matt. So Matt's going to deliver the majority of this presentation. I'm going to hop in where I think my voices will be useful, which might be everywhere, it might be nowhere. We'll see. But Matt, I'll pass to you, and we'll get started.
Sweet. Okay, so first slide, you guys have all seen this look. Maybe we've had this look at some point in time when looking at our laptops. I would venture to bet that somewhere um, in our space of SEO and website intelligence and web marketing, there is somebody sitting in front of a computer with this face saying, what the hell right now, when they're looking at some specific requirements or trying to make sense of instructions that were given to them by either an SEO or a developer. There's something lost in the communication, and it obviously leads to a point where someone is looking like this, frustrated. Well, what that means then when we actually then work in person, if we actually do work in a office environment, a lot of us I know work remotely these days, but when we actually do get the great chance to connect um, with our colleagues in person, well, this type of frustration around the requirements for any type of implementation can be even more frustrating because all of those moments that we get to spend in person with our colleagues are vital. So any type of consternation or anything like that when it comes to implementation can lead to just some awkward conversations in the workplace, and that's not ideal for anyone when it comes to being able to understand what problem needs to be solved, either from the SEO perspective or the development perspective. And what happens when that frustration happens, when requirements aren't clear? Well, somebody, whether it's the SEO, developer, engineer, is sitting in front of someone from a management perspective who even understands less about the current problem at hand, but is now thinking from the perspective of not really um, how to have better communication or to better collaborate in the future. It's simply a question of, hey, something is broke, traffic is down, revenue is down. What the heck happened? At that point, fixing that collaboration between SEO and devs is already lost because now the problem has been expedited to management and someone has to account for it. This is the type of cycle that I think for those of you in the poll that have said that you've been unsuccessful in the past, or you've been neither successful or unsuccessful, maybe some of the scenarios that I just spoke to, you guys can relate to, and have been part of your day to day. And how do we actually break that cycle? Well, a gift that I like to use from Office is this specific one. Why we created the SEO Development Integration Celebration, or what I like to call it anyways. An opportunity for both SEOs and devs to understand there doesn't need to be consternation. There doesn't need to be frustration because there are common goals and alignment that naturally take place between these two parties. From the dev perspective, devs want to write good code, quality code, and be efficient in how they deploy content across a website, multiple websites. They want to do their job well. In doing their job well, it comes with efficiency. And that's something that as an SEO is also very valued because obviously the lighter the code frame, the lighter that they're able to do and be able to provide better user experience and performance for customers and readers of a web property, those both tie into the objectives that SEOs are trying to achieve for better website engagement and performance. Devs want to do great work, build as efficient code as possible. SEOs need that efficient and light code to have better performing websites. So it's not that there's a knowledge gap between devs and SEOs in terms of their work priorities, and sometimes that needs to be talked through in a workspace. But ultimately, this is the inherent mutual understanding that SEOs and devs have, but may not sometimes always communicate to each other and needs, I think, to be prioritized within organizations. When we look at breaking the cycle from the SEO perspective, well, as an SEO myself, I could definitely speak to this throughout my career. Before coming into Lumar, as a solutions consultant, I've done SEO both on the vendor side as well as the agency side. And I learned throughout my career that the best way to come into a new working environment, a new team that you're working with, is of course to not come in and demand and ask for things right away. You guys remember that slide that I just showed maybe like 2 or 3 slides ago, where you had everyone in the group talking and looking at the screen, trying to figure out something. That scenario could easily be an SEO walking into a room of developers and saying, hey, you need to do this. No one likes to be told how to do their job, particularly by a non-management stakeholder or someone that they don't see on a regular basis. The best way to build relationships and to build that trust and really get things done from the SEO side is just to have some humility. Establish rapport by understanding the process, asking questions, coming from a place of truly trying to understand what's happening moving forward. And then as we move into the second point, once you have those questions and you begin to understand the process, be thorough in that you understand their processes and that you can communicate with things that are going to help and aid them in their day-to-day. There is an opportunity, of course, when you understand the processes of the team at hand. Well, maybe there's things that in your role as an SEO, you know that you can better help the developers in terms of how tickets are being delivered, understanding a particular framework that developers work within, and being mindful of that when you communicate your SEO recommendations. And then also being thorough about what the end goal is for why we are focusing this. It's not always a situation where you have to speak to a dev around something that is broken on a website and needs to be fixed. Communication can also come after the fact. It can come after the fact after the devs have implemented something that you've asked for. Well, what type of positive output did that achieve? I think that also helps build trust and authority really between teams and can help understand and get things done moving forward.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt, if I could just jump in there for a second, a couple of things on that. Being thorough in communication. I always think that actually one of the most important bits in a ticket, if you do like standard agile ticket format, right, as a blank, I want to blank, so that blank. The most important bit you would think the I want to would be, but often the so that bit is equally as important, if not more so, because it's so tempting as an SEO to deliver. I want to fix the canonical tag so that the canonical tags work. If you take 100 words to explain, to use that space as a little primer on what a canonical tag is, that makes a big difference. Again, especially if you have a dev team who understand that, oh, well, hell, 50% of our traffic comes from SEO. It's really important that we get these tags right. Um, it's a really big difference. It makes a really, really big difference. And similarly, um, as a dev, you a lot of devs obviously they do the work and then they just move on. And I think sometimes, as Matt said, an email with a screenshot from Search Console or from Ahrefs or whatever you use to say, "Hey, we did this work on December the 10th, and then on January the 1st, look at this difference in traffic." You know what I mean? Like, did this, you doing this did this, and it's a little bit of thanks to the development team, and it also gives them a tangible, oh well, wow, this stuff I'm doing actually makes a difference, and it makes life a lot easier for the next time that you ask for some inscrutable thing to be added to a page because Google has suggested it's a good idea. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that I think really ties into that last point of make life as easy as possible. And one of the ways that we do that is through helping devs understand out of all the things that they are focusing on in their day-to-day, things that are both SEO oriented or other aspects of the user experience that they are focused on and are probably being asked to do from other teams. How can we, as SEOs, better, again, help devs understand where their attention should lie, where the prioritization should be? And out of all the recommendations that could be put forth, creating something like a task prioritization grid can really kind of, I guess, crystallize for both teams where things should come in their day-to-day priority and the output, what's the goal for each of those tasks. And this is something that I know Chris Spann has worked on with our clients at Lumar and probably even prior to Lumar. So I think Chris could probably talk a little bit about how he was able to bring this concept to success in working day to day with our clients.
Yeah. I mean, it's dead simple when you break it down. Effectively, if something's not a lot of effort and doesn't require much development involvement, or doesn't require any, do it yourself. Do it now. Do it right away. I am awful for putting things off that I think I will do another time. Just do it now. Just get it done right now. Um, it makes a huge difference. If you have something that's a bit more effort, um, then what you're going to want to do is see if it can be squeezed in, or the way that we used to, when I used to work at travel supermarket group, we used to refer to it as while the bonnet's open, while the hood's open. So hey, if you know that somebody's working on the head of the page and you need something doing on the head of the page, see if you can get that, even if it might involve a quiet Slack DM or wheeling round to somebody's desk and being like, hey, there isn't a ticket for this, but or hey, this ticket here, that'd be real easy to fix while you're doing this. Um, that's what I mean by squeezed in. So if you can do it while the hood's open, while the bonnet's open, whatever the term you want to use is, then obviously on the other side, if it's a lot of effort and it's going to involve a lot of development work, it's got to be a ticket. It's got to be on the board. There's no way of getting around it. And then obviously, at the same time again, if it's a lot of effort but it doesn't involve much dev involvement, then get it prioritized within your team, and get it done as and when there's time to do that big bit of work. So really, really simple, but it's something that I say I used to use mainly when I was in house. But it's a kind of thought process that obviously gets used across the board. For me, the most important bit though is that squeezing things in. Get a job done while someone's already doing another job, because it's like anything else, right? Um, if you have to go upstairs to get something in your house, right? You don't want to then go up 5 minutes later to get something else, right? Go up and get everything you need in the one go.
It's so interesting. I was just thinking about that. Like when you are climbing the stairs, or you know you have to climb the stairs eventually and bring something up, just leaving some stuff at the bottom of the stairs to remind you that you have to bring this up later when you actually are ready to go up to the stairs. I suppose that could be like a real life example of when we have to set those
Yeah.
priorities versus the
I
things that.
mean, case in point, right? Yesterday, my wife and I realized our kitchen bin needed emptying. We remembered the bin bags were upstairs, so we just didn't empty the kitchen bin. Um, so, it's exactly the same thing, right?
hmm The the thing that is really cool about our
Hmm.
platform and the other things that we've been working on at Lumar is that this is a step of communication that I think a lot of SEOs may have struggled with in the past, particularly around transforming the recommendations that you make um, on a web page, whether you're doing it via PDFs or you have a long drawn out Excel spreadsheet line by line with different recommendations. Anything that you build, of course, is never going to align directly into how a developer or an engineer would need to view that recommendation. It needs to be formalized and put into a dev ticket with the associated requirements on how to fix it, acceptance criteria. And I think back to earlier in my SEO career when I literally was just writing sticky notes on PDFs to just ask devs to make this enhancement to a title tag or to focus on a file size compression ask just simply in that manner. And that's not how devs really receive work. And I learned this very intimately after I was able to take a dev boot camp and realize how devs like to receive information, how they like to work. And Lumar has done a really good job through our AI generated ticket delivery by being able to transform the simplest descriptions of what needs to be done or what's being asked to do from the SEO side into something really, truly actionable that the dev can do. So this is just a way that I think at Lumar, we're really trying to help and close some of those gaps where historically devs and SEOs have struggled in that basic communication through the power of AI. Now, everything when I first put together this presentation, everything that I saw in content was how the SEO should work better with developers. And it's true. More often than not, I think there is a case of the SEOs need to come in and have a better understanding of the work environment that developers work in. But it is a two-way streak. There are times where I think the developers can obviously better support SEOs by just finding that alignment. And of course, earlier in the presentation, we talked about the inherent understanding that SEOs and developers should have about just doing good work, good efficient work. But what does that actually look like in practice, or how should it look like in practice? No SEO wants to walk into a room and see maybe two developers kind of looking at them with a look kind of like this when they ask to get something done. Of course, developers can do well to make a working environment comfortable for both parties and really make it seem like you want to do good work together. And what I mean by that is helping break the traditional silos that we have in communication. Of course, in this remote work environment that a lot of us probably on this call are in, sometimes that can be hard versus a traditional office space. But that first point there, of course, can be addressed in terms of developers bringing SEOs into the communication, into the regular meetings as much as possible. In our space, we talk to SEOs a lot, for instance, who work in publishing, who have been done really well to integrate themselves into newsroom conversations or working with people, of course, to align and make sure that the communication around things that pertain both to their jobs, the curation of news stories, and then obviously SEO research that can factor into how those should be prioritized, has proven to be successful for a lot of organizations. In the same way, SEOs can also, of course, lean heavier into those dev conversations, and devs can do well to invite SEOs to those regular meetings just to keep people in the loop. I talked earlier about the importance of the alignment between SEOs and devs. And in my career, I have met plenty of developers who want to understand SEO further. They want to do good work. But I do sometimes, over the course of my career, meet developers who maybe have other priorities in mind. Maybe SEO isn't top of mind, and that's okay. To expect developers to be SEO gurus or to even be thinking about SEO on a day-to-day is, I think, a challenge, especially when you have all other things on your disposal, other teams coming at you for asks. But a way that devs, of course, can be helpful in this relationship is just to continue to be SEO curious. Continue to ask questions, just as we talked about the idea of wanting to do good work. Well, in doing good development work, aligning yourselves with SEO best practices is ultimately going to tie into better dev, better code. And of course, the continuous feedback loop for optimization, allowing SEOs to understand what works with their workflow, what doesn't. In Lumar, we have our Protect product, which is an automated template testing that can be done both in a pre-production environment as well as a live production environment. But what it does is it allows SEOs to run the same tests, the tests that developers may be running around UX, compliance, performance, can now put things such as title tag optimization, internal redirect optimization, or just understanding the basic reports that we care about as SEOs, that rather than having to look at them after the fact, after code's been implemented, all the standard SEO reports that we would cover in Lumar can be aligned within the dev cycle and follow the CI/CD pipeline to potentially prevent issues from going out that we know are going to have a drastic impact on traffic and revenue after the fact. Again, avoiding that conversation that teams have to have with management after something's been broken. Let's talk about real-world SEO dev partnership success. We have a lot of great examples at Lumar with a lot of the work that we've done with our clients. But of course, I think the collaboration leading to success will involve these three pillars. Of course, being very clear and understanding specific needs from clients, not assuming what needs that they have on the client side, but of course, working to understand how to address technical structural problems with the website and align that with the specific business goals an organization may have year over year, quarter over quarter. This relationship between devs and engineers, I just mentioned before, of course, allowing devs to be SEO curious, but learning more and solving together is just going to be fruitful in any working relationship. Because when you learn more and solve together, the feeling of success together, I think, is something that can be really good to help bring teams together and just build better core relationships. And I know, Chris, you have some specific stories at your time at Lumar that can kind of speak to some of this.
Yeah, the big one was a really interesting one. And actually, I was talking about this on Blue Sky today. We have a client who, when I joined, had some pretty serious technical issues. So effectively, they had a big, heavy JavaScript web app site that they would serve pre-rendered versions of pages to Google. But what we sort of quickly learned was that that renderer was sometimes either serving empty pages or sometimes the wrong pages. Like literally, you would ask for the red dresses page and get the green t-shirts page in the content. Total mess, and the rankings reflected that because things would rank for a bit and then drop and then come back and things were all over the place. And we really strongly suspected that the big issue here was these pre-rendered pages were causing a real problem. Meanwhile, all of their competitors were moving to basically bespoke landing pages, like a lot of other industries currently use. But the problem that we had was obviously this was going to be a big shift because it was going to involve a load of redirecting. It was going to involve an awful lot of rerouting to ensure that Google got to the right places. Some canonical work, a lot of technical debt, etc., etc., etc. It was a big undertaking, and I won't lie, it took a very long time, I think, for the team finally to listen. Obviously, again, when you're if you're agency side and your point of contact, your normal point of contact is an SEO, it can be even trickier because then you've got three levels of three games of telephone to play before you get to somebody. But effectively, the first thing we did was we went off and we found the great thing about SEO is most problems someone else has already had and written a good article about somewhere, right, on SEO land or search engine land or one of the other sites. So we went off and we compiled a list of, hey, here's a load of sites that have had big, heavy JavaScript sites that have moved to nice, light HTML pages, things like that. And also here's just click around and see what all your competitors are doing. And kind of again, going back to Matt's point, to ask and gently ask the question of the developers, do you feel like your work is do you feel like what you're presenting is as good as what these sites have, because ultimately this is the question again that we have to ask as SEOs. Is when people say, how do we beat our competitors? It's like, okay, we'll use your competitor's site and use your own. Is yours as good? Can you honestly say that yours is as good as this? So that was step one. Then obviously step two involved just a lot of meetings to go over the fine details of it. But again, as you say, you've got to remember that developers especially nowadays, because of the money that devs can get, do bounce around a lot of jobs, and they may well have experience of an SEO who maybe is not the most technical in their previous place. Obviously we have some SEOs like myself who are very technical, and Matt, and then other SEOs who are who focus more on digital PR, link building, that side of things. And unfortunately, sometimes those people have to do technical SEO, and there's no shade there. I would be an awful digital PR person now. I've not had to do it for years. But they may well have been burned, for want of a better word, by an SEO who is not in their comfort zone, trying to spec out a job. That's where they might have come from, or they might have come from a previous job where SEO was of no concern, and they really want to do a good job, but they don't know anything. So you've got to go in and spec out who these people are. And a big thing that I found with devs is don't talk in SEO terms. Don't talk about equity. Don't talk about links. Don't talk about kilobytes, and talk about seconds, and talk about server responses and traffic and these things, because these are we forget how much of SEO is I nearly said made up, but you know what I mean? Our slightly vague metrics that we are forced to work with because Google doesn't give us anything better. The rest of the world, understandably, expects to be able to actually have definites to work in. So, we can say, well, by doing this, we can speed page load up by, X percent or Y percent. We can do, we can save a meg. And again, if you're speaking to somebody who's in charge of making sure of infrastructure, they're going to hear that and go, oh, so what? We can make each page load significantly cheaper. It makes a big difference. I'm working with a client at the moment to archive a lot of their content. Is it me to give you some idea? They are, I think, as a website older than Google, they have a lot of content. One of their key things is, okay, but what's the ongoing cost of this going to be? What's the cost of a page load of this old content versus the stuff in that's in the CMS? So you have to be able to answer those questions. You have to be able to remember that, and it works both ways. No questions are dumb, stupid, and it's always worth really massively highlighting that, I think, to the teams as well, because again, sometimes people think they know, and again, genuinely, I don't say that as a slight to anybody. I hear people call canonical tags canonical redirects and things like that, and you have to say, well, that's not what it is, So you have to go in with that open mind. And the other big thing is always remember that I know and I'm still guilty of this sometimes. You look at, changing a tag or updating a tag or adding a tag and think it was just text on a page, isn't it? Yes and no. It can be, my job when I was at TSM was I spoke enough marketing to explain to the devs what marketing actually wanted, and I spoke enough dev to explain to marketing why what they were asking for might be a bit more difficult than they think, right? So be prepared and be willing to learn what the devs. I mean, again, that's assuming that the devs want to explain these things. Some don't, but hopefully you've got a good dev team there who will explain to you. Well, no, this will be a big bit of work actually because, and then the more they do that, it means that the next time they come to you. The next time you come to them with a problem, they know that you have either that level of understanding or the willingness to learn. And then also the other big thing on top of that is they might say, "Oh, well, that's going to be really difficult because of this problem. We'd have to check every page on the site." And then you can say, "Well, hey, I've got a crawler, so I could go and check every page on the site now. It'll take me an hour, and I'll have that in a CSV file, and then you can use that, to build a script off or whatever." Sometimes highlighting to devs, because devs don't know the tool set we've got, and if you're a PHP dev working on a WordPress blog, you don't know what am I trying to say? Your domain is that PHP,
Mhm.
that PHP and that WordPress install, right? Whereas as an SEO, we need to know about the WordPress blog, we need to know about the Shopify store, we need to know about etc. 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 So we've got overview of the entire site, so we can go and get information for people if they need it. So sometimes it is just proving. It sounds mercenary, proving your worth, proving you're useful, or
Yeah.
ways you can be useful to other teams. Again, things like providing Ray IDs, which are the IDs that Cloudflare uses. If you've got an error, um, go open up DevTools, go into the network requests tab, find the page that you're on. If you use Cloudflare, there'll be a header called CFRay. Grab the code that's there. It'll be like a 16, I think it's a 16-digit string, and keep a copy of that because that is like the unique ID for that server exchange. So you can say, hey, I saw this error. We need to fix it. Here's an example of when it happened. And then that infrastructure team can look into how or why or what rule triggered that particular error. Sorry, Matt, I've talked for a very long time there.
No, no, Chris, I've just been sitting back enjoying it because these are real life anecdotes and things that speak to what we deal with day to day. And I'm sure folks on the call here
Yeah,
would
yeah.
love to hear that from someone who does the work. So I've been taking it all in myself. I think the point that you mentioned earlier around speaking as much as you can as an SEO in absolutes is probably music to the ears of a lot of developers that they work with.
Hmm.
A lot of times, and I've felt like I've dealt with this throughout my career, sometimes when we're talking about SEO and trying to forecast the success of certain things, it's tough to do. Everyone on this call can relate to that, right? And sometimes to marketers, executive level folks within the team who want to understand the digital business, SEO can seem like voodoo to people because it's contingent upon what's happening in the search landscape. It's contingent upon the actual implementation percentage of the people that you work with. So there are a lot of moving parts that actually can prevent SEOs to predict what's going to happen. But when we talk about things like performance and how to improve your core web vital scoring within the site, which is, of course, something that Lumar provides, it gives an opportunity to specifically tell the teams that you're working with, this is the output that we can expect. These are probably things that you care about from your day to day. Look how much our crawler is able to show and scale this for you at an enterprise level to make your job easier. And this is the expected output that you can receive. That it helps really crystallize things for devs, and I think that's so true. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Everybody likes line goes up. You've just got to find the right line to show people. You've got to find the line that they care about going up.
absolutely. And you also had me too around when you're thinking about the ways that you communicate, moving out of the complete SEO lexicon and trying to bridge that gap for maybe folks that aren't privy to what the significance of an H1 tag is on the page. So this is an example of some screenshots from a case study from Flying V Group. CEO Rob Farian needed to better understand how they can optimize the workflow between the work that they did as an SEO agency and the developers that they may be working with their clients who need to have a better understanding of the specific recommendations. So in an initial exercise, Flying V Group, using the screen grab to the top left, try to explain issue by issue what was missing from the client's website. And it was pretty bare bones, but it was just some basic call outs. And what the result was after setting those was what we see on the bottom. Um, Things around no need to optimize H1 and image alt tags, but there are multiple H1 tags. The home page isn't focused on one thing, it's introduction to various parts of the website. Rather than a place where the SEOs had an opportunity to explain the importance of a header one tag relative to the other headers on the site, the communication back became completely defensive. The robots.txt, which for the folks on the call is going to be pretty important to optimize and really kind of define certain directives and commands around bot activity on the site. And just by saying no robots.txt found, that wasn't enough information for developers who are working in the code every day. And so, of course, the answer for number 5 makes sense. We're not blocking access to any portion of the site from search engines. Why would they need to understand that context? And yeah, I mean, I personally love number four the most when we're talking about uh, Google Webmaster Tools before it was changed to Search Console. Yeah, set up at launch, but not on my account, right? So it's just interesting how this simple communication between SEOs and developers that they work with obviously caused some frustration and made Flying V Group understand and have to think to themselves how to better communicate moving forward. Earlier, Chris, you mentioned how important it was to maybe sometimes include screenshots and provide a business case for your specific recommendations. Well, this specific screenshot was how Flying V Group evolved to their communication moving forward after that initial mishap, explaining the impact of an XML sitemap and helping kind of really define the responses to the developers who probably didn't have a good understanding at the time what the importance of each change was.
Yeah. If I could jump in here again with another real world anecdote from again my days at TSM, funnily enough, which is sitemaps related. One day, I came in, checked my and this isn't just a plug we did use as it was called Deep Crawl at the time. We were Lumar users. I checked my crawls one day and found that one of the sitemaps, the flights sitemap, had just gone missing. Didn't work anymore. No idea why. Now again, obviously the one thing I could do was just screenshot Lumar saying this doesn't work, or this is erroring, send it to somebody and demand it be fixed. Um, but what I did was I did a little bit of research, and basically it turned out that we had recently we started working with a new partner, as I remember, a new flight price aggregation partner, and a lot of that work was actually handled by it was what we call a reverse proxy. So it was our URLs, but the actual content was dealt with by their site. And an enterprise and developer somewhere had decided that anything that sat on the URL or on the string /flight anything would be handled by the other server. So there was a rule in place that did that, which is great and fine. Apart from the fact that our sitemap was called flights-sitemap .xml. So what was happening was that URL specifically was then just being handed off to a completely different website. Obviously, then that meant the sitemaps weren't working, etc., etc., etc. So obviously, did that bit of research. It allowed me to then explain what the issue was, because obviously all the developers would have done is pointed to the back end and gone, "There's the sitemap in the tool. There's the sitemap in the CMS. It looks fine to me." So just doing that research, it then also meant that what we did was we renamed all of the sitemaps to sitemap hyphen and then the channel that they sat on. Just because, again, use it as a learning opportunity. By doing that, you future-proof yourself because, again, best will in the world, the developer who made that change may well move on. A new developer comes in, and then in 6 months' time, we're having the same issue with, I don't know, hotels or car hire or whatever. So it's again, use it as a learning opportunity to in your communication, and also use it as a learning opportunity to go, okay, well, what can I do, and what can my requirements be to future proof myself from this mishap happening again next time? Again, sometimes that might be, let's put a crawl in place to make sure we're checking this. Let's put testing in place or whatever. But sometimes it's literally just like, hey, let's change the naming structure of our files so that because no one else in the business is ever going to call anything sitemap. That's us. So let's, or SEO sitemap, or hell, if you need to, Chris's sitemap. Just something that's not going to get triggered by a routing change at the back end.
It's like the early steps towards just building governance standards without maybe the big project of let's build SEO governance standards. It's doing the little things that can help prevent future regression and build better communication in the long run. It's another thing that we think about at Lumar in speaking of governance standards is, not all organizations have that strong SEO group with multiple SEO stakeholders and multiple devs to work on it. Sometimes you have an SEO heavy organization with maybe a limited dev environment. Sometimes, and we deal with this at Lumar, sometimes when we talk to prospective customers, is we have customers that are such heavy dev focuses within their organization that SEO has maybe been historically deprioritized, but they need to build that into their workflow. They need to build that in, maybe not necessarily without bringing on an SEO team right away, or they need to ramp up an SEO team who may be more green, for instance. This screenshot here is an example of a command line interface where we can actually connect devs specifically with the specific SEO insights that they want by being able to do a simple single page fetch to be able to test URLs on the fly in the console environment where they prefer to work. It's being adaptable, understanding the needs of different businesses as they grow. And this is just something that Lumar does, and we work with our clients in ways to just help orgs mature at the rate that they need to.
Yeah. If you're, and just quickly, if you're looking at this and kind of wondering, well, again, if you're looking at a page of script and going, oh no, a couple of real world examples, we can use this to essentially, as part of the build process, I mean, whichever way around, let's say going from dev into live, there can be a test in here to say, make sure that these pages aren't no indexed. If they are, the build fails, the page does not go live, and then you don't come back after a weekend or a week off and going, oh my God, where's all our product pages gone? We can use it for a number of different things. I mean, obviously that's the most obvious one. But again, just making sure that things 200 that should, making sure that canonical tags are what we expect them to be. And if not, say if it's built correctly, if it's built into your Jenkins pipeline or whatever you use, you can fail a build with this and save everybody a lot of heartache down the line. Again, similarly, if you have this in your dev build, instead what you do is make sure this page is no indexed. If you've got a live dev environment, then you can say, right, don't put anything on this that has an index tag in it because it's going to cause problems. I love this tool. I love it as if you have a big SEO project, you can just define a lot of your requirements day one, get them built into tests, and then they're there and they're written, and things will just fail the build. And people get used to things. People will get used to builds failing because of SEO stuff. They won't like it initially, but it's a new thing. The only thing you do have to be careful with this is I've seen some sites use page speed and lighthouse. And like if a lighthouse score is below a certain thing, fail a test. What you quite often find then is when that moves into live and you have a lot of third-party scripts and stuff like that, everything fails. So it's a thing you've got to be careful of in there. But in terms of this, in terms of the way we use it within Lumar, I think it's amazing just for kind of double protecting yourself.
Yeah. And having that feedback loop just be immediate for teams that just need it and work within that environment, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
Kind of just to wrap up here, I mean, really, we've talked a little bit about the value of Lumar that can really support this collaboration between devs and SEOs. And a lot of it, again, harping back on the point of feedback loop, is really inherent in our product, whether it's understanding the value of the specific errors that have been found, and then building that internal prioritization within the platform, and pushing that into a dev pipeline to test, measure, and maintain, and optimize at whichever level makes the most sense. This, of course, can be done not just for SEO, but we talk about this when we talk about site performance with our site speed product. We have this in our accessibility offering, and really building up whatever use cases are most important for the business. All the tests that we were talking about with our template testing that Chris and I were testing, of course, they can be applied to your standard SEO test, but of course, it also goes much larger than that. It can be applied to proprietary metrics within the business. And so we really want to be able to align in the same process, no matter where you sit within the digital org. So if everything that Chris and I talked about went in one ear and throughout the other, hopefully it didn't completely, but three key takeaways that I think we want from today is just really that basic communication of coming in with humility and understanding. Sometimes that takes time, as we talked about, but that empathy just goes a long way. So both from the SEO side and the development side, seems like a simple concept, but that comes from a place of wanting to understand each other. The accountability, of course, is also very important. not pointing fingers, understanding that every party has a hand in issues that happen with deployment. And of course, over time, when those relationships between the SEOs and developers come stronger because of the shared understandings that they're building, accountability becomes less finger pointing and just understanding how we can be better as a team. That's really where that accountability comes from. And it just ties in directly to the collaboration improvement and trying new things and learning together.
Cool,
Poll
yeah.
question number two.
The one thing I'm going to quickly add to that about accountability, just remember, especially if you're going to point fingers, unless you catch an issue within seconds of it happening, if you claim that a problem that someone's made is a major problem, someone will ask you why it took you 4 days to notice. So just think about that. So poll question number two, very quickly. Just while I'm reading this out, we are about to move into the Q&A section. If you have any burning questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A using the Zoom toolbar at the bottom. I'll quickly ask this poll question, and then we'll move on. Would you like to demo the collaboration features in Lumar platform? So that's the test stuff that we were talking about. That's AI tickets. That's everything. AI tickets, especially, I think, is quite is great for very quickly getting the framework of a ticket built out. You do sometimes need to add some specific detail yourself. That's maybe just business. That's business specific. But in terms of getting 80% of a ticket written without having to do it yourself, it is a fantastic little tool. Okay, cool. So while people are answering that, I will keep an eye on the Q&A box. But we've also got a couple of pre-submitted questions that I'm going to move straight into now. So question number one. Do you have any examples of companies where SEOs and developers work really well together, and what can we learn from them? Any insights on how teams and tools are structured in organizations where the SEO dev relationship runs smoothly, suggestions for meeting frequency, task tracking, etc. So for me, and again, this is going to sound incredibly arrogant, but I'm going to say it anyway. The best working relationship I've seen was when and this is nothing to do with me, it's worth saying, was when I was at Travel Supermarket, purely because
I mean, you happen to be there, so you saw
well,
it. So.
but it was a few things. So number one, I sat on a bank of desks with our development team, or the majority of our development team. So I was always within earshot. So number one, go, hey, whoa, what's no, don't do that, please. Or similarly, I was in range for people to shout, hey Chris, can you just come over and explain to me why we're doing this? Or hey Chris, I think I read something about this being bad for SEO. Is this right? Especially when you're doing kind of quite JavaScript heavy stuff and things like that. It's really useful to be able to just wheel your chair around to the dev team and get involved. If you work externally, again, try and get into the right Slack channels, things like that. You are, especially if you're a tech SEO, you are a part of the product team. You even though you might report to marketing, you will need to sell into somebody that you are part of product. You have requirements that need to be made. You are part of product, and that's how I was treated when I was there. Also, I would attend. Again, it was easy because the scrums would happen behind me, so I would attend those scrums. In terms of meeting frequency and task tracking, etc., Jira task tracking is probably what you're using. If not, make sure you get access to the big, whatever the big task tracking tool is. Maybe in a smaller business, it might still be Trello or something like that. If you're a little bit more enterprise, it may well be a Jira or something similar like that. And then in terms of meeting frequency, it's going to vary depending on your business. If your dev team is a fairly agile team and they're doing a lot, you're going to want to get to daily scrums if you can, or at least attend a couple a week or something like that, so you can have sight of what tickets are going across the board. Because again, with the best will in the world, sometimes a developer might not realize why this job is a bad idea for SEO. Again, you may well see, oh, the CEO was using a website on the weekend and he really liked the navigation, and now that the CEO wants us to have that navigation, and you as an SEO will go, okay, well, I've got a lot of things to say about that you might not necessarily think. So it's going to vary, but I would say at least once a week, I think you need to be getting sight of what the dev team are doing. And similarly, the dev team might need sight of what the SEO team are up to, because you can make their lives more difficult sometimes, again, unknowingly. Especially, hey, we're onboarding a new crawler, something like that. Your infrastructure team is probably going to want to know about where all these new requests are coming from every Sunday afternoon, right? So that's a big thing from me. Matt, what about yourself?
I was just going to say, I know it can seem daunting, particularly in like a remote work environment, right? Like the example that you laid out, Chris, was in your physical office space, being within earshot of the devs and just being accessible to their meetings and what was going on allowed you just to build a communication flow and trust over time. But in that remote work environment, it's not always a possibility. And as great as Slack is, sometimes that's not even an option too. So how do you, as an SEO, how do you kind of get in there? How do you build those relationships? I've seen at different orgs, different strategies for how to build that collaboration and even in those remote environments, right? We all hear about the use cases or the times where people will try to organize a after work happy hour or drinks or coffee within the environment. And those are all fine strategies, but sometimes you could take it a step further. Understanding the particular interests of the devs that you work with. What are the things they like to do? Is it board games? I worked with someone or I knew somebody at a tech organization during the pandemic who really strove to build better relationships with a lot of the devs and engineers that she worked with by setting up a regular game of Catan, Settlers of Catan, and just playing that and building some basic collaboration. That was just her leaning into the interests of her team. It wasn't super forced and it happened organically. And sometimes by doing those types of things, it just becomes very valuable to just in building those relationships moving forward.
Hmm.
We have a couple more seated questions, but I just want to check, Chris, do we have any questions that have come in from the board here, or are we still looking at some of the pre-slide seated ones? Either is
Hmm.
okay. Probably a time for
Um, Yeah. So we've got one question. It's not super on topic, but I think we can answer it anyway. Um, so I've only worked as an in-house SEO specialist and a little bit of freelance, but I want to move to agency. How can I do this since most agencies need agency experience? Now I can actually answer this fairly. That was a similar experience to me when I came to Lumar.
Mhm.
Um, and again, actually, it does tie into what we're talking about here, where effectively, do remember that if you're in house at the moment, you're probably working with a few different product managers, potentially a couple of different dev teams or a couple of different devs. They are individual clients, good as. And that's a lot of time, that's what agencies want is the ability to say, to work, to balance client A, client B, team A, team B. So if you've got that ability to say, well, hey, no, I'm in house, but I'm used to saying to team A, I can't work on that until I finish work on team B. Um, that I think is going to be stand you in very, very good stead. Um,
Also coming from an agency background at a point in my career, a lot of times, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, Chris, is that as SEOs on the agency side, we have to talk to internal SEOs who then also have to talk to their stakeholders internally.
yeah.
So a key part of being an SEO on the agency side is almost a little bit of that project management work, the
Hmm.
communication, moving things along. So I think it's important when you're trying to make that switch into the client side from, or sorry, making the switch from client side into agency side is showcasing to the agencies that you work with, even without agency experience, that you have a good job, of course, communicating with your vendor partners and you can build a good working relationship. Also, being able to explain to folks who are higher up outside of the SEO in their day to
Hmm.
day what the impact of the work is that you're doing. I just remember my time at Group M, a lot of work was, of course, business justification and just explaining technical things to non-technical people. So I would say in your role, I think that communication and working on how you can communicate across different parties, like Chris said, is going to be really key to making that
Yeah.
transition, proving that.
Going back to what we were saying about developers before, similarly again, yeah, CEOs and CMOs don't talk in seconds and kilobytes. They don't talk in equity. They talk in revenue and profit, right, and traffic. You use so it's knowing how to speak to the audience that you're talking to. Okay, cool. I think yes, just a final little bit of wrap up. Want to dive deeper? What's coming up soon? So obviously we have our blog with some more information there about AI powered dev ticket creation. We had the podcast hosted by yours truly, which reminds me I need to get some recording done before I take a little bit of time off. Um, Absolutely excellent load of conversations I've had at Brighton SEO with some amazing people: Will Critchlow, Dan Taylor. Oh, and in fact, another one with Natasha Burtonshaw DeVry, who is hosting our next webinar on 5th of March. So in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And that is going to be the AI playbook for SEO teams. Obviously, SEO, AI is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and appearing more and more in our world. How do you deal with it as an SEO? That's going to be 8 a.m. PT, 11 a.m. ET, 4 p.m. GMT on the 5th of March. Hit that link below to sign up. And I think, Matt, that is everything a minute over time.
Awesome. As Chris mentioned earlier in the call, this information, this presentation will be available in the coming days. And just want to thank everybody for your time. Hope to catch you at the next one.
Great. Thanks, folks.